so we can go ahead and get started with this meeting. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda?
The first item on the agenda is a resolution recognizing James Cahan's leadership and service to the city and recommending that City Hall East be renamed as James Cahan City Hall East.
Okay, we have several cards on this item. Let's see. Oh, Javier Nunez?
Thank you, Mr. Alarcon. Good afternoon. I'm here on behalf of Sergio Rascon, Business Manager of Labor's Local 300 here in Los Angeles, representing 8,000 members in the city of LA. And we're in support of the resolution recognizing James Hahn leadership to the service of the city and our membership, that you would consider naming City Hall East the James K. Hahn, putting a plaque on it. And I believe that, and I believe I speak for our membership, that we have to recognize more people in our city that do good for our city. I think that sometimes there are a lot of good people, even behind the scene, that are not recognized for their efforts to make the city of LA what it is today. It took a lot of hard work to where we're at, and constantly people are trying to tear down what's been built up. But we have to recognize those that labored and worked hard in our city, and so Local 300 stands with the support of item 1. Thank you.
Thank you. John Emerson?
Yes, Council Member, thank you very much. John Emerson, I had the privilege of serving for 5 years as Jim Hahn's Chief Deputy City Attorney in the late 80s and early 90s. And, you know, Jim is a public servant of Los Angeles in the truest sense of the word, and a real citizen of Los Angeles. He spent 5 years as a Deputy City Attorney working in this building, the building across the street. He was Controller for 4 years, City Attorney for 16 years, and then, of course, Mayor for 4 years. Jim, as City Attorney, really transformed that office. He brought what was sort of a law office that was apart from the people right to the people, and created both the drug and gang abatement programs that brought the City Attorney's office right into neighborhoods. He created the first domestic violence unit in the nation, which became a model for domestic violence prosecutions across the country. And he helped lead the restructuring of the LAPD in the wake of the Christopher Commission report after the Rodney King incident. As mayor, something that I don't think Jim gets enough credit for, he really put his political career on the line by antagonizing his base in trying to hold the city together during the succession efforts, and he did what he thought he needed to do to help reduce crime, the rising rate of crime in Los Angeles, and did a very successful job of that as well. And now as judge, he continues to serve LA. But maybe most importantly, I don't know anyone in public life who is more selfless and less self-aggrandizing than Jim Hahn. And I think it would be a wonderful, wonderful testament to his work for the city of Los Angeles to have the City Hall East named for him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. David Cunningham, the third.
Good afternoon, Councilman and other members of the committee. It's such a pleasure to be here this morning, or this afternoon. I am so honored to have an opportunity to talk about James Cahan, a man who I've known for many, many decades, and who, like yourself, Councilman Alicorn, and others of our city family, have served for decades for the people of the city of Los Angeles. And he's done some extraordinary things. You've heard from Mr. Emerson, where he talked about what James Cahan did during his administration as city attorney. I can talk about what he did as mayor, because I was his president of the police commission. I was on the commission for 4 years, and for 2 years I served as president. One thing that he did was unify Los Angeles. In many respects, you can look at James Cahan and say, on the national level, looking at him locally, he's comparable to Lincoln in the sense that he helped to maintain the unity of the city of Los Angeles. And today, we don't consider that very significant, but if you look at the impact of what could have happened to this city, that was an incredible gift to the people of Los Angeles. The second reason that I'm in favor of the resolution is with respect to his approach to community policing. And it was James Cahan and his appointment of Bill Bratton and moving the police department forward with community policing and constitutional policing, which has the LAPD on the right footing today. And then thirdly, the $100 million housing trust fund that he helped create in 2003. Those are actions that had a tremendous and continue to have a tremendous impact on all the people who live, work, and play in the city of Los Angeles. And he did that selfishly, and I know him as a friend, and I can say that he's extraordinarily humble, and he would probably say, don't need to do this for me, but I certainly appreciate it, and I think he deserves it, and thank you for letting me tell you that.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
Jimmy Woods Gray.
Good afternoon, Councilman Alarcon. It is a pleasure for me at almost any time to rise to speak to Jim Hahn's service. He was a very honorable, a man with high integrity, and very modest. It was my pleasure to work with him in many capacities. I knew him before he became mayor and before he became city attorney, and I'm sure I speak for my mother, who turned 90 a few weeks ago, in saying that we strongly support the idea of naming this building for James Kenneth Hahn. As an educator, I was impressed with the work that he did with the LA Best after-school program, which served more than 5,500 additional students at 52 additional locations under his term. He opened up or renovated many libraries, approximately 25 branches of the library. And it was an outspoken person for each of those libraries as they opened. He really advocated strongly for those, and those are valuable institutions in our community which exist and will last for years to come. He established a school facilities division in the mayor's office to work with the LAUSD to build new schools and promote agreements that allowed greater community use of school facilities, which is something that the community benefits from. And he started a Cash for College program, which still exists today and has served hundreds of thousands of students and their families by providing them assistance with assessing college scholarships and loans. I had the pleasure of serving as president of the commission, the Neighborhood Empowerment Commission. Oh, this is my warranty time. And we certified over 85 commissions, neighborhood councils under Mayor Hahn, and he also provided for the first time monetary $50,000 for each of those. I urge your committee to support our recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy. Pat McCosker.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, member. Pat McCosker, President, United Firefighters. I am the president of the local that represents rank and file firefighters, as you know, and I had the pleasure of being in that same position during Mayor Hahn's term. And I want to tell you that, when he became mayor, it was at a time that the fire department had really suffered some great losses. We had sort of died on the vine under a previous mayor. We lost positions. We lost resources, and our EMS system in particular was described as circle in the drain, and there were actually hearings held by the county EMS agency contemplating having someone else provide emergency medical service in Los Angeles. I remember it very well. And I remember when Jim Hahn came in, he made a commitment to us, and it was a commitment to put a paramedic in every fire station in the city and an ambulance in every station. It was a more than doubling in each of those categories. And he did that. He followed through on it despite times that weren't particularly good in terms of budget. There wasn't a lot of money to spend on new programs in Los Angeles, and yet he invested in that emergency medical response like no one ever did, and probably ever will be able to again. I've reminded him, I've reminded others who were on the council at the time, and you guys were to some extent as well, and I thank you for it. But I've reminded folks that by doing that, not only were lives saved then, but lives are still being saved today because of that, and will be years from now because of that. So, as far as I'm concerned, Jim Hahn is a lifesaver, and I would really be honored to have that building next door, City Hall East, be named in his honor. I know it's being contemplated probably because of his years of service in the city attorney's office, which is housed there, but guess what? The fire department is as well. The 18th floor is my fire department's headquarters, and nothing would honor rank and file firefighters more than having our headquarters in the James Cahan building. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Tim McCosker?
Thank you very much, Tim McCosker. When it came to all things Jim Hahn, I was always in the shadows. Now I understand why. Jim's actions and his words would speak for themselves, and there's so many greater speakers than I on behalf of Jim Hahn. I hope you'd appreciate that I'm at least as biased as any person on earth on this issue. And I know I'm probably tied with a lot of folks, but it would be impossible for me to add anything to what Jimmy or John or David or Pat or others could say about Jim Hahn. The time that he spent as city attorney and city controller and deputy city attorney and city controller and city attorney and mayor for the city of Los Angeles were a big part of his life. A big part of that life was in City Hall East. And it would be a great honor to all of the people that work for the city of LA every day. It would do a great honor to the people who are served by those throughout the city to have City Hall East named in honor of James Cahan. And so thank you very much for even considering this.
Thank you. Tony?
I feel honored to be part of this motion, and the more I'm involved in politics, the more I realize what a really great public servant Jimmy Hahn has been and continues to be, as he continues to be a judge. But having been an elected official myself, and Jimmy Hahn having served in the capacity of an elected official, it's sad that the public can't or doesn't seem to appreciate quiet politicians, that the public doesn't seem to appreciate unassuming politicians, and the public, I don't think, appreciates how we need more of them, because I'm not including me in that. And the fact that Jimmy Hahn served so quietly, yet served, I think, honorably and honestly, is something that is commendable. And I've never been a fan of having buildings named nameless, per se. City Hall East, what the heck is that? That's a location. That really has no spirit in it. It really has no history in it, other than pointing out that that building is east of this building. But to be able to have the honor of bestowing the name on somebody who has served honorably, and I think is someone who exudes certain qualities that we all can learn from, is, to me, something that we should do. And I move that we approve this.
Thank you. It's interesting that that this is coming before my committee. I actually was hired by the city in 1981, and Jim started as controller in 1981. So I've had the opportunity to watch his career, essentially from his political career, at least from day one. He signed my check for the first 4 years. So you know,
But you owe him nothing.
You know who signs your check. But more than that, I was hired in Mayor Bradley's Criminal Justice Planning Office and had many occasions to work with Jim Hahn in my own duties. Some controversial issues relative to crime reduction, the countywide anti-gang task force, which then City Attorney Hahn was very actively involved in. And mid-level drug offender program, we worked with him on that, but also that office produced the automated fingerprint identification system, and at every step of the way, whatever we did, we had to work with the City Attorney Hahn on whether it be implementing a contract or, more importantly, having a perspective on crime reduction. And I can tell you that the Mayor Bradley and Jim Hahn were inextricably linked on their beliefs about how to move forward on crime reduction efforts. So he appointed me, by the way, to one of his criminal justice task forces, and I don't remember which one it was, but it was a darn good committee, but it was sort of this committee. I do remember sitting down in the committee and working with him, but every quarter we would sit down and it was I was appointed not because I worked for Mayor Bradley, but because I was chairman of the Mexican American Political Association in the Northeast San Fernando Valley. And what the committee was community leaders from across the city that would come together to give him advice on what was going on in the communities in terms of their perspective on crime reduction and police response and city attorney programs. So it was interesting that the model he chose to give advice on a wide range of public policy was one that emanated from the community leaders from throughout Los Angeles. Also, we worked on the very first gang abatement program in the city of Los Angeles, which was in my council district. After I was elected to the city council, it was established in my district, so we worked very closely. It was tough for a couple of liberal Democrats to move forward with a gang abatement because we were getting slammed by the liberal media for overstepping constitutional bounds, civil liberties, and those kinds of things. But he and I, perhaps because of our city experience, our common city experience, had a unique perspective, and we understood that as long as the police were operating in a legal fashion, respecting civil rights, that these communities were being controlled by gangs, and we needed a mechanism to allow us to go in and take back control for the community. Jim is a very nice man. I think the greatest tribute to Jim Hahn is not only that after he was not successful in his re-election for mayor, he nevertheless became a Superior Court judge, because somebody understood that this is somebody that was dedicated to public service. And while he may not have been the general choice of the people of Los Angeles for that particular election, I think somebody recognized that he had a lot of commitment left to provide public service, and I can't think of a better place for him to be but in the Superior Court, because he is a very deliberate person. He is very fair. He is concerned about the community. He's concerned, I'm sure, about the people that have to stand before him in judgment. And I think he is going to do an outstanding job, and over time will be recognized as one of the great judges in our system. So it is without hesitation that we move forward, Tony and I, who both of us having worked with him, move forward with this recommendation. You know, it's interesting. I'd like to name a whole bunch of buildings after the whole Hahn family, because this family is unique in Los Angeles in terms of its general impact on governance of the city and county of Los Angeles, and not just Janice and Kenneth, but also I think it was Gordon, who was also a city councilman in the city. No other family has had as much impact as the combined efforts of these members. Those of us who studied political science studied Jim Hahn in college, and he served as studied Kenneth Hahn in college. I'm sorry. I get confused all the time. But he developed the sort of community method to providing public service as an elected official, and certainly is the mentor to so many, by even at a distance, if not directly. So I wish we could name a building after all these people, but I think we already have the Kenneth Hahn building. We're still working on Gordon and Janice, but maybe somebody else will come up with that idea. But right now, it is timely that we recognize a great servant to the city of Los Angeles, James Kenneth Hahn, and we do so in a prominent way, as the City Hall East facility is one of the most prominent buildings in our government. So with that, Councilman Cardenas and I are very pleased and proud and honored to have the opportunity to be amongst the first to vote for this motion and move it forward. So with that, it's a unanimous decision, and we're happy to move this on to City Council for final decision. Thank you. Thank you all for taking the time to testify. We recognize you have very important schedules. Okay, items number 4 through 8 are routine items. If Councilman Cardenas has no objection, we'll move forward with those as consent items. Item number 2.
Motion relative to the status of lease agreements for the installation of telecommunications equipment on City of Los Angeles property, including potential revenue for such agreements and other related matters.
Is there any report on this?
Yeah.
Or?
Reggie Jones-Sawyer, General Services Department, Asset Management Division. We've been working with Councilman Cardenas' office to look at the various ways that we can maximize the telecommunication opportunities on our sites, whether it's on the land or on top of our buildings. There's been intense discussions with the council office because we've received a myriad of different ways that the city can capitalize and maximize profits on all of these buildings, from dealing with the individual providers like AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon, Sprint, who want to get on our properties to maximize their coverage in the areas, to what I would call groups called bundlers, people who will come in, craft a deal with the providers I just mentioned, and then they bring that back to the city and say that they can maximize the most profit that we can get out of it. To where we just get consultants. One of the challenges that we have as a government is we don't do this every day. This isn't our core competence, and we do need the private sector to help us. And so we also need the help and aid of consultants who can guide us on how to make this happen best for the City of Los Angeles. And in those discussions with the council office, we started to try to think out of the box. Instead of just doing an RFP, request for proposal, that strictly delves into doing one of those concepts, let's create what we would call a bench of providers who are pre-qualified to come and then look at our property in its totality and bring back various different types of ways we can maximize our real estate, and then bring it back to the policymakers and the people who make the decision whether or not we enter into these telecommunicating contracts, bring it back to you so you can bless it and have us move forward. And so we've been working with the city attorney's office, and unfortunately they've had some staffing challenges. And in fact, the individual that's working with us has not been in the office for a while, who can work with creating this type of contract. It is somewhat unique in is that we may be talking 3 or 4 different disciplines that we're looking at. But ultimately, we'll have people on the bench that can then look at our properties and then get back to the city with the best and most lucrative offer.
Reggie, one of the things, it's my understanding that an RFP may not be a requirement if, in fact, somebody were to negotiate to have, say, some kind of repeater antenna or something like that on one of our facilities, and we can go ahead and sign a lease for that space. The reason why it may not be required to have an RFP is because it doesn't preclude us from allowing someone else to have, say, an antenna or a similar kind of apparatus on our facility, correct? It's not an exclusive, is what I'm saying. It's not like once one is there, then nobody else can be on that spot.
Correct.
Utilizing that kind of technology. So my point is, so isn't it the case that very likely an RFP would not be required?
And that's what I'm trying to talk through with the city attorney. What is the best mechanism? We say RFP because that's what we're used to. And if that's not the appropriate mechanism, then we'll work through that and figure out what's the best legal means to do this. Because you're right, having repeaters and then having us wholesale it out might be the most lucrative way to do it.
But the reason why I point that out is because a lot of times people are assuming that we go out to an RFP because we're doing business with a third party. One of the main reasons why we go out to an RFP is because the winner of that RFP is the only winner. Everybody else is out of luck. Everybody else cannot participate. But in this particular case, if we have a site, we can have 1 antenna, 2, 3, 4, 5, et cetera. So there is no one winner. So just because you already have one user on that site doesn't preclude us from doing business with somebody else. So there really is no potential loser of being able to do business on that site, correct?
Correct.
So what's the timing on this?
I'd have to sit with it, be able to get some timelines from the city attorney's office, and I haven't been able to get that. Like I said, the individual who's one of the best in the office at crafting contracts has not been available. She's been working on from Occupy LA issues and so forth, which has kind of pulled her away from it. But hopefully we can get her focused. If not her, it's going to take some time, maybe even talk to the city attorneys about getting someone else there.
I can't imagine that there aren't jurisdictions out there who haven't done this already.
Most of the jurisdictions do a sole source kind of deal where there's one provider and then you're basically at the mercy of that provider to bring in the best opportunity. Most of them are just to one provider. And we're trying to avoid that because we've heard, and the councilman and both of us, we've heard a myriad of different ways to do this, and all of them are good, but they may not be apropos to each of our sites, and we shouldn't have a cookie-cutter approach to how to make this happen.
Well, recognizing all that, every day we don't do this is revenue loss.
Definitely.
And so if we could prioritize this, that would be great. Is there anything we can do to light a fire under the process?
Well, what I'll do is get a due date from them this week, the city attorneys. If I'm not able to, I will alert your offices that I need some help quickly to make this a priority in the city attorney's office.
Okay, great. Okay, with that, then, where do we, is there an action item? No, let's see.
Do you wish to continue it in committee?
Why don't we continue it for 30 days, Mr. Chairman? That way we hopefully get some light shed on how soon the city attorney can act. The city attorney's office has...
Do we have to approve the motion?
No, if you approve the motion, you're moving it forward. If you're holding it in committee, you can simply hold it in committee.
Okay. Yeah, we can hold it in committee as long as you're moving forward. And 30 days is what I have in my notes, so that's cool with me. Okay, that'll be the order.
Thank you.
Item number 3.
Item number 3 is there are 6 courthouses, vacant space, and the City of Los Angeles, the City Attorney's Office, and LAPD, in a way that we are able to maximize our staff, they work out of the various courthouses. The courthouses have gone through a change. They used to be with the LA County. of Los Angeles. They've now been with the state, and the state is now requiring us to have leases with the state of California, and this is 6 of them. And as you can see, they're at various costs. Some are as low as 27 cents a square foot,
Wow.
to as much as $2.33 a square foot. These are critical facilities for both the city attorney, because now they don't have their attorneys here in City Hall, and then they have to go up to the courthouses. They're there, and they provide a valuable resource to the court system.
Okay. Yeah, honestly, I don't know why this wasn't a consent item. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, it looks straightforward to me.
Okay. Then that matter is approved. The last item is item number 9.
On item 9, what you have before you is a motion relative to the relocation of AT&T current wireless antenna located on the rooftop of Scatterwood Generating Station. This is in Playa del Rey, and they're recommending relocation to the rooftop of the Harry Pregerson Building at the Hyperion Treatment Plant.
AT&T had a wireless antenna on the rooftop at the DWP Scattergood Generating Station in Playa del Rey. DWP needed that site for some major construction and some build-outs that they were doing, and so they had to move their site. They identified another site at the Hyperion Treatment Plant on the Harry Pregerson Building in approximate same area. This antenna provides basically the regional area for people to get their cell phones. In fact, I think AT&T, now that they're no longer there at Scattergood, they're starting to receive quite a few calls from employees and people in the area because they're not getting their call. And so they're asking to move their repeater site from the DWP site to a City of Los Angeles sanitation site. And that's basically it. And they need this done probably like last month. And so there's some urgency to it.
Okay. So it's essentially the same agreement, just at a different location?
Well, we're looking at to see what is the appropriate price for it right now.
Explain the difference between the item we just discussed regarding renting other city facilities for repeaters and the like, and this item. How are they different?
The one we were talking about earlier is probably more global. This is specific to a site, and once we get kind of a global idea, we'll be coming back to you with specific.
How do we get this one done?
How do we get this one done?
Yeah.
Because I would say because AT&T was in dire need of having this done as soon as possible. They've made quite a few calls. It was an urgent matter for them. And
so
the fact that one city.
I'm just curious. Why aren't there other companies that are wanting to do the same thing on city facilities?
This isn't unique in that they were already on a city site in DWP, and they basically kicked off that site.
Oh, for this transaction, but, so they contracted with DWP.
Yeah, they were.
So if DWP can contract them, how come we can't?
No, we are going to contract with AT&T. This is what.
Well, I understand that, but my point is, if they could figure out how to contract with them for this repeater, how come we can't repeat the same process on the city side? We're going to do it for this particular thing, but what about all the other ones that Tony's talking about?
And I think that's what we're moving toward.
Reggie, what the chairman is saying is, if we can figure out a way to get a legally binding agreement with somebody, it happens to be AT&T, for an antenna on a city site, which it looks like we're moving forward with on this item, what's so different between that and doing agreements on other sites around the city, where we're waiting for the city attorney's office to let us know whether we can, how to do it right?
Yeah, but
we seem to be doing it right on this one.
Actually, my question was more specific. How did the DWP figure it out?
DWP, and I guess the best answer would be DWP has worked for a certain goal of what they wanted. We've been working with trying to move this forward, and without getting into the complexities of different lobbyists coming in. We've tried several times to move forward with different types of contracts, and they've gotten stopped, basically.
Okay, so if AT&T had come to us on a different site, on a new site, that was City of LA, we wouldn't be able to do what DWP did?
Councilmember, the DWP initially went through an RFP process themselves in order to select AT&T, and in order to...
DWP identified this site and the Scattergood site and said, we should try to generate some revenue.
But they did it through an RFP.
They went through an RFP,
Okay.
a request for proposals, and they awarded a contract to AT&T for this particular site. They may have also awarded, consistent with what Mr. Reginald Jones Sawyer Sr. just said, they may have went through a process where they awarded multiple contracts, okay, much like we think the city ought to pursue. And so what happened is, as a result of awarding this contract, AT&T installed their equipment. Then the DWP needed that site, as Mr. Jones Sawyer said, for some additional construction work on existing facilities. So AT&T has to move. The only way that they can move from a DWP site to a site under the purview of the City of Los Angeles would be by having a motion introduced by a council person directing us to specifically do that. Without that motion on any other building, we would not be able to do what's in front of you today.
Well, I get that, but you're still not answering the underlying question. Outside of this general answer about lobbyists, which I don't get, and I don't know why there's secrecy about that. But the question is, how come DWP can do it and we can't?
Well, the motion that we are currently compelled to operate under directs us to negotiate with T-Mobile. We went through a process with Hold on a second.
What motion is that?
This was a motion that was presented to us. As you can see, Councilman, the issue before you was continued from May 4th and May 16th of 2010. So we've been looking at this issue for some time. And we have a motion that directed us to look at contracting with T-Mobile. We started looking at that, and that's when we recognized that there could be some very, very lucrative opportunities for the city if we started thinking outside of that specific direction from council. So we went through a whole process, including hiring an appraiser to look at what we should charge for those sites. When we got that information back and we sat down with the representatives from T-Mobile, their numbers were a long ways away from the numbers that we had freshly minted by an appraiser. So we got nowhere with them, but what that told us was that we need to think a little bit more broadly about this and look at what the opportunities could be if we looked at every cell phone provider out there and asked them to submit a proposal and then selected a group of companies and pre-qualified them. Then what we can do is we can grab a group of buildings, cluster them, and ask each one of those companies to submit a proposal.
You're just being redundant, because he already explained all that. My question is still, how come the DWP can do it?
Well, I guess I've made my best attempt, Councilman, and I would suggest really that we'd have to talk to the DWP.
But the DWP did it differently than what we've instructed staff to try to figure out. The DWP did an RFP process, which personally, I think that's not a smart thing to do, because when we do an RFP, then we're being exclusive with one party, and we can't take advantage of the dynamics that maybe more than one party would like to pay us to be on that site. But that's where we ran into a problem. The city attorney's office has not, the city attorney's office hasn't provided us with the language we would need for such an agreement.
Well, frankly, you can use either process. It doesn't matter. If you, on an RFP process, you can identify 10 sites, do a request for proposal, and restrict each of the companies to one site if you want to get a demonstration project. Boom, it's done. They submit on one of those sites, they make a proposal, and then we choose to accept or not. I'm not understanding why DWP can do it and we can't do it.
We can do an RFP.
We can. We can.
We haven't.
An RFP doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be like 10 people can propose for City Hall. We could say one person, we're going to give 10 of these out, and you can apply for one, just as a demonstration so that we can figure out over time. Maybe we do 5. We just say, you can apply for one, we're going to take the best 5 proposals and implement them as a pilot project, and then move on.
Councilmember, we do have cell phone equipment and transmitters on top of city-owned buildings now, and that was something that was done some time ago. But the market has changed significantly. There's a lot of competition, and what we want to do is to try to maximize the revenue that's received by the city.
Well, I recognize that, but the thing is, when you don't have a contract, you're not getting any revenue. You're not maximizing anything. Time kills money.
You got it.
Okay,
And
well,
that's a fundamental business principle. You don't even have to be a businessman to know that. This is
Now
money.
you're understanding
This
my
is
frustration.
well, this is money. This is money that we're not getting that we should get. And we have how many buildings? Hundreds.
we have
should-
hundreds of buildings.
This is a lot of money that could save jobs for the city. Save jobs for your department. Yeah, and it's very frustrating.
So could we get some specific direction, and we'll start the
Specific direction is to make it happen.
You know what? You know what I'd like to do, Mr.
You
Chairman?
figure it out. Why did council members who aren't skilled in general services functions, why should we come up with the idea? The department can come up with the idea and make a proposal to us.
I'd like to ask the GSP staff to do something.
I second it.
Come back to this committee once it's been executed and signed and AT&T is off to the races on this particular site, because I'm still confused as to how we can actually execute a contract. Well, I don't care if it's AT&T. It looks like we're going to execute a contract, and rightfully so, with a third party on exactly what we've been trying to do since 2010. But apparently the city attorney's office is saying, well, we're not exactly ready to show you the language that it takes to be able to do that. Yet we're getting the language, because this is going to go through the city attorney to draw up the contract, correct?
Right.
On this particular item, item 9. So we've inadvertently proved, when we get this done, we will have inadvertently proved that we really weren't waiting for anything on the previous item, Mr. Chairman, for so long. That's basically what we're going to do. We're going to prove that we shouldn't have had to wait so long to do what can be duplicated in item 9.
Well, I can appreciate that, but that's not my goal. My goal is to get money for the city.
Right.
That's it. And we should hold all general managers' feet to the fire to try and stimulate more revenue where they can. And this is a revenue stream. And to think that we're approaching 2 years in discussion on this item, that is not the way to save this city's budget. So we got to make this happen. So in 30 days, hopefully, well, we're going to approve this item.
Yeah.
You're coming back in 30 days on the other item.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll have a continuance of that discussion. So this matter is approved, and we'll talk about the other one when we talk about it. Okay, thank
And
you.
let us know as soon as the ink dries, because that's the contract that's the concept contract we've been looking for the last 2 years, right here on item 9.
Okay, well, with that, this meeting, I have no public comment cards.
You go to the general comment?
There's no-
Yeah, no public comment, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.